Well, today I'd like to welcome Deborah Brody Hamilton to Careertopia, and let me give our viewers a little bit of background. Deborah and I first met on Career Fuel. It was some months back. She was blogging about being in the job market, and she was sharing the ups and downs that she was experiencing along the way. And while she was hunting for a new job, our team at Careertopia, we were in the process of creating our site and our e-course. And I was confident that the tools that we were using would help her in her journey. So I reached out. Deborah used some of our tools. She consulted with one of our coaches, and she headed out to find her own Careertopia. So thanks for being here, Deborah. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Yeah. Sure. And you're in Washington, D.C. I'm here in Arizona. Yeah. And so I'll just go ahead and jump into it, unless you have any thoughts.
Okay, no, that's great.
Okay, so last fall you found yourself back in the job market. You had a career of 20 plus years in the nonprofit sector, mainly in DC. And how long had it been since you'd been job seeking?
Oh, well, gosh, at least 15 years probably, and even then I was always looking for a job with it while I had a job. So I was never really completely out of work.
So much less pressure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So did you find it a different environment than you had the prior time you'd been out looking actively hunting?
Oh God, I found I couldn't believe the environment. Honestly, I felt so naive that I had been reading the Wall Street Journal and all the papers and hearing about the job market and how hard it was, and I guess I didn't really believe it. I thought I would find a job again in a couple of weeks. I'd always in the past had always just kind of networked my way into another job. And so, yeah, it was a real eye-opener to me, and how much had changed.
What was one of the changes in the hiring process that you had experienced from now versus way back when?
The biggest change, and some of this might be attributable to the fact that I'm older and that kind of at a more senior level, but not all of it. Was the proliferation of recruiters and headhunters, recruiters, whatever you want to call them, intermediaries, so that organizations, I would say 90% of the organizations that I looked at weren't doing their own job searches. They were hiring it out, and that really complicated the process and made it much, much harder for me.
Yeah, and probably drags it out quite a bit.
It drags it out, and some recruiters are really great, and then others don't know the organization well or the culture, and I would spend hours and hours going through interviews with them, and by the time I actually met the client, who would be the person I would be working with, and found out that they didn't represent the job the way that the client represented it to me, or there was no chemistry, and this is all stuff that could have eliminated a lot of back and forth, like off the bat, if I had just met the person who was hiring. So that was really frustrating for me, and that happened a lot.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I remember reading in your initial blog post, you were getting a lot of advice from people, and not all of it was useful. But you also mentioned the best piece of advice that you received. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I had the very fortunate experience of working with a professional coach in a previous job where I was managing a lot of people, and we had kind of an executive coaching group that I would go to, and I could consult with her. So she was professional and knew this stuff, and the thing that she said to me that was so helpful was really focus on what you want to learn next, and just cut out all the white noise about what you should be doing or what you and so just really make this fun and make it about learning and what have you always wanted to learn.
Gotcha. Good advice.
Yeah, it was really good advice.
One of the core concepts that we teach at Careertopia is having a strong sense of self-awareness to find your natural propensities and what motivates you, and we feel that is crucial to helping people find their Careertopia,
Yeah.
the perfect career fit for them. So do you agree with the power of self-awareness?
Oh, yes, I think it's huge. And I think that it's interesting because there is, when you're looking for a job, there's so much, I keep calling it noise, or you get so much advice and you're interacting with so many people, and it's so confusing. And so I think that you really have to be grounded, and you really have to stay true to yourself and know who you are. And it's a very hard thing to do. And very hard, I mean, for me, it was very hard to do in isolation, which is another kind of aspect of job searching, is that you go from being at least I did, in working in a team environment, to, you know, working by yourself, and every day having to get up and structure your day. And you really do have to know yourself, or you can get pulled in all sorts of crazy directions.
All right, that is a challenge. Great, well, thanks for sharing that. One of the first things that we did together was we had you take one of the assessments from our Careertopia starter kit. And can you share a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, so the disc is what I took, and I took that online, and and went through it really quickly, and you're supposed to kind of just answer the questions the way that your initial impulse is to answer them. So I did that, and I was very fortunate to have Carol of your staff schedule a phone call with me where she went through the results and debriefed with me, and that was incredibly helpful to me. It's always interesting to learn about yourself through different tools, but I definitely would not have gotten as much out of it if Carol hadn't talked me through it.
Yeah,
so
she's
that
the
was
best.
really, yeah, she is great. It was really valuable.
Cool. And I remember speaking with her afterwards. She really enjoyed working with you too. And after you guys had gone through your assessment results, I recall that you had experienced one or two ahas about your behavior in the workplace and your preferred communication style. And did you find anything surprising in the results, or anything that impacted you for the rest of your journey?
Everything that came, one thing that, I don't know, I guess it's always surprising when an instrument like that, you start reading the pages and it reads you so accurately, and you think, wow, this is really incredible. How in the world, could this be so accurate? But it really was. There wasn't much about it that didn't resonate with me. And the biggest aha for me, I guess, was that it came up that I'm really not a person who needs to be like I'm an influencer more. So I like to lead through influencing others. And Carol really drove home the fact that I draw a lot of energy from working in a team environment, which is something that I hadn't really thought too much about before.
Great. Yeah, sometimes, like you said, when you have the experience of an assessment like that, on one hand, you go, wow, that really is right on. That is me. But we don't always pull out the applicable data of how that applies in our work. So on one hand, you're agreeing with it, but on the other hand, you don't see the application until you go through the report or you work with a coach to point it out for you. So
and the one thing she said, she really encouraged me to get out more and to interact more, and she was absolutely right. What had happened is I had kind of gotten into this mode where I felt like I just had to be sending resumes out. Right. And and I was home, and I was home. It just wasn't healthy. So that was really, really helpful to me, just to hear that. And she also really picked up on the fact that I don't like to follow rules. So, which is good to know, because I was looking at big corporations and government jobs and things that probably wouldn't have been a good fit. So it was a good thing, to know about myself.
Right, because sometimes the content of what you'll be working on is exciting and sounds like a good fit, but the nature regarding how you like to follow rules or not follow rules as they're set by others doesn't necessarily work, and then you have a conflict of two strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And also the part where how you like to be communicated with was really interesting for me, because I went through the list, and the yeah. Everything was exactly what the CEO I had been working for had been doing, and I felt just so demoralized by it. And then the way I like to be communicated with, I had another CEO I worked for, and that was exactly how he communicated. And so it was really interesting. It just shows you how important it is to work for somebody, whose style fits with yours.
Right, and I would bet that before taking the assessment and seeing that in that analytical nature, the way it's spelled out in the report, you probably knew you really liked working with this one person and you really didn't like working with this other person, but you didn't know what it was that worked well in one case and well in the other. But when you see it spelled out in black and white, you're like, oh yeah, this person is doing all those things that I don't like. Now that makes sense. He's not evil. He just communicates.
Yeah, it helps kind of depersonalize it and
right.
say, well, yeah, exactly.
And if you're remaining in the situation where you still have to interface with that person regularly, then it at least creates some tolerance and maybe a little more understanding the next time you have to go in the room with them. So
exactly. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right. Let's see. I remember you wrote about, in another one of your posts, wrote about doing your resume, and you were challenged by how to present what you kind of felt were like meh accomplishments, and creating them into impressive content. And you ended up with an external and objective person, helping you through that challenge. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the other thing I found is I got lots of feedback on my resume, and it's very confusing because everybody has a different take on your resume. Like some people, oh, you need to put numbers in, and other people are, you need to put more action verbs, or it's just constant editing. And so and when you're so close to a document and it's about you, it's your life story basically. That actually doing my resume this round was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, and it still isn't exactly right.
But sometimes it takes like that external view, that external person, to help us gain a better appreciation for our skill set or our accomplishments in the past.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And for me, I think that the part of kind of a real aha for me was that I was minimizing things that came easily to me that I've done my whole life. I just do. So I was minimizing that kind of stuff when, in fact, these are big accomplishments and big selling points. And it's like breathing the stuff I'm good at is like breathing to me. So I don't think of it. Yeah, I don't think of it as anything like noteworthy and special. And I feel like I'm like bragging about something that I'm bragging about breathing, or something like that. And so it helped to really understand that those are significant and need to be highlighted. And
after 4 months of hunting, you received a job offer. How did that come about?
This is I'm at a loss to explain it, honestly, because I got into this mode where, I did a couple of things that were maybe counterintuitive. Like, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, nothing's going to, once Thanksgiving hits, nothing's going to happen through the holidays and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, are you kidding me? I spent the whole Thanksgiving holiday putting out resumes, and I was like, as far as I'm concerned, December is a great time to find a job. And I just had that in my head. And so that really helped me. So I had a bunch of interviews that happened the first couple weeks of December, just kind of like bam, 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 like a lot of stuff started hitting. And at the same time, I was setting up networking meetings. So I would do an interview and I would go, then I would go and meet with somebody, and I had almost exhausted my entire contacts list. And I went back and looked through like my old appointments, and I found this person I had met with a few years ago, about, who seemed interesting about a project, and I just emailed him and said, oh, can I come by and see you? I'm looking for a job, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, sure, I don't know, you're not in our field, you don't do what we do kind of thing, but come by anyway. So that was what happened, and so I stopped by to see this man, and we started talking, and he was suggesting, this, that, and the other thing, and then he said, well, let's just put aside your resume. Why don't you just talk to me about what you're good at and what you like to do? And so I started talking, and he was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, you're really good. And I still didn't know that he had a job. And then he said there was somebody else he wanted me to meet, and he went to look for this person, and she wasn't available. So later that day, she emailed me and asked me if I could just come by and meet her for a coffee. And so I thought it was just another networking meeting. And so I just stopped by, you know, and we had a wonderful talk. And at the end of our conversation, she pulled out this job description and said, we have this job, it just opened up. I don't even know what we have to do to hire. We haven't posted it yet, you know. But would you be interested? And we went through the job description, and it was like, yes, 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 kind of thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, I won't go belabor the story, but within 10 days, I had a job offer, and it moved that fast, and it was incredible because it was out of my field, and but it was squarely in that area that you guys call your sweet spot, what I like to do, and yes, and what I'm interested in, and where my skill set is. So it was like right there, which was amazing. So I don't know I got my job offer at like 3:00 p.m. on Christmas Eve. So I don't know what to say about that, except it was a miracle. So
A Christmas miracle.
it really was.
I was really happy when I was checking in with you on email, just saying, hey, how's it going? And when you said you had an offer, I was so excited for you.
Well, it was amazing. And the other thing that's kind of scary is that I probably had, of the 7 or 8 job interviews that I had in December, none of them were really, some of them suspended their searches after the holidays and, for financial reasons. Others never got back to me. I mean, it would have just been a nightmare. So I just feel really lucky that I got an offer and,
That's great.
work. Yeah.
So how is this position, you said it's outside of the area you had been doing before, but how is it different from what you were doing before?
Well, I had spent, as you mentioned, I had been in the nonprofit sector for almost my entire career, and this is in the private sector. It's a for-profit company that does really exclusively like government contract work. So it's Washington D.C. and it's government, which is good because that's a big source of funding in Washington. But it's not, I kind of got trapped into this nonprofit area where unfortunately a lot of my job was fundraising, and I got to the point where I'd rather stick pins in my eyes than fundraise, but unfortunately, that was what the market was, that was anybody who ever saw my resume, that's what they wanted me to do. So yeah, so I was very fortunate that I'm in a job where we have funding. So it's using a lot of the same skills, all the same skills that I used before, but in a different way.
Gotcha.
A different environment, different culture.
Gotcha. So was there anything that you learned from your Careertopia experience that told you that this position would be a good fit, that gave you that confidence?
I think I got a lot of clarity about kind of my sweet spot, which and it came out, I reread my DISC assessment, and it's even more useful now than at the time that I took it. I wasn't working, so it was a little bit harder because I couldn't apply it to a work environment. But it's even clearer now how I'm in a position where I'm doing communications. And it's like everywhere in my DISC, it's like you're a communicator. You like to communicate. You like to talk. You like to write. You like to connect people. Everything about my profile puts me in communication. So yeah, it just makes perfect sense.
That's great. So that reduced like any feeling of risk you might have had in accepting the position.
Yeah, it's a very natural fit. It really is.
Great. So I'll wrap up a little bit here. At Careertopia, our objective is to help people know themselves better and learn to better understand others once they master the first piece, and then show them how to build effective relationships. So after your recent experience, do you feel that any one of these pieces is more important than the other two, or are they all equally important, or was any one of them especially difficult for you?
I think the knowing yourself one is, I think everything depends on that, and I think that that's the hardest thing to do. And so it's really helpful to have kind of that mirror back about, what you're good at and where you excel, and just to have real clarity around that. I think it just really helps you attract the kinds of opportunities you want. So for me, I think once you feel really comfortable knowing your strengths and where, what kind of environment you need to be in, then I think the other stuff falls into place a lot better.
Great. So would you recommend the Careertopia starter kit for people who are considering a job change or a career change, or trying to figure out why they're not happy in what they're doing right now?
Oh, I would definitely recommend it. I thought it was a lot of fun, and it's always fun to do these things, and it's fun. You guys made it really fun. I loved how you made it playful and fun, and I appreciated that, and very interactive, and it's always really, really fascinating, and I think it can also help you. I think back to when I was earlier in my career, in a position that, that was a good fit for me, but yet there were things I was struggling with, and I think it would have helped me then a lot as well. So I think that you don't have to necessarily be changing jobs, but I think it could actually help you in the job that you're in to either do things differently, or particularly, I loved the people profiler, and I found that to be, had I had that when I was younger, I probably could have avoided just, misstepping with people, just by not realizing, that there are just certain ways that people like to be communicated with, and when you're, in a more junior position, you need to adapt.
Right.
So
yeah, because after the fact, like you, when I looked back, and after doing the disc and using the people profiler a little bit and understanding all this a little bit better, I immediately thought of, some former managers and supervisors, and thought, oh, I must have driven them nuts when I did that. And for me, it was just, I thought I was doing the right thing, but because their style was so different, it was not the right thing. So.
The funny story was that I did it on my husband, and he has somebody, a coworker, he'll come home and he'll be like, oh my God, you can't believe what so-and-so did, blah, blah, blah. And the funny thing, and he, this profile nailed him so accurately that the list of how to communicate effectively with him and things not to do with him was so accurate that he actually gave it to his coworker. And she was really like, wow, I didn't know that about you. I had no idea that, that I should approach you this way instead of this way, or, that kind of thing. So I think it's really helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it'd be nice if everybody could use it and every team could use it. Yeah.
That's what we would like too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, great. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience with us. And I know it means a lot to the viewers, and especially to me and Bryce. And I really appreciate you taking the time from your evening to sit down and chat with us. And yeah, I'm just so glad that we've gotten to know each other, and maybe someday we'll actually be in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're very welcome. And yes, and I wish you great success. I encourage everybody just to try out your website and experiment a little bit.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Deborah. Have a great night.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.